So what drew me into photography generally is I've always been the documentarian of my family, and I always had the camera with me on vacations, holidays. I was always the one taking photos and that. So to me, what the interest is just documenting a moment in time to look back on, whether it's with family or even street photography, just a moment kind of time in a city. So that's where I started with photography, and that's still the draw to it now, is capturing people, a moment in their lives that they're going to be able to hold on to forever. What drew me to tintype photography is I found I was kind of chasing a tangible image. Like I loved digital when it happened. I'm kind of a big tech guy. Like I always wanted the newest tech and the newest cameras. So I was shooting digital. I eventually I want to go back to film. So I got a medium format Rolleiflex. I was shooting film, but in the end I was just scanning those negatives, and it was just only existing on a computer or in the cloud. I knew about tintype photography before. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. My wife and I went to a trip to New York City. There's a place there called the Penumbra Foundation, and they do all kinds of alternative processes for photography. So they had their own tintype studio. My wife gifted me a 4x5 portrait. We had our portrait taken so I could see the process, and I was like, I want to do that. And I knew it was a tangible plate that would exist kind of for forever. Just by luck, when I got back from the trip, it was like a few days later on Twitter, I saw the camera store was having a workshop for tintype photography. And so I went and I did the workshop, taught by Takoa Perdika. He's was a local Calgary guy at the time. He'd moved to BC, he's back now, but he'd been doing it for well over a decade, super knowledgeable. Kind of learned the basics from him, and then spent a year kind of acquiring all the infrastructure I need to get going. The big allure being the physical object, the actual plate, which will kind of last forever. But additionally, the process itself is, I think, the best for capturing an image, and I don't think it's gotten better. Sheet film, roll film, digital, it has gotten more convenient, but the actual resulting image I don't think has gotten better since 1850s when wet plate collodion was invented. A tintype, which is a form of the wet plate collodion photographic process. What it is, it's pouring a chemical emulsion on In the case of Tintype, a blackened metal plate. There's also ambrotypes, which is the same process, just on a piece of glass. Chemical emulsion's poured on. It is sensitized in a bath of silver nitrate, which makes silver iodide on the plate from a chemical reaction. And then you have basically a custom piece of film. It's loaded into a view camera, an image is made, and then it's developed right away. It's called wet plate coating because the plate has to remain wet for the entire time. Once it dries, an image can't be developed from it. So from when I pour a plate to when it gets developed, it has to be within about 12 minutes depending on weather before the plate starts to dry. And so that means I have to have a dark room with me wherever I am. So in my studio, I have a dark room here in the bathroom. If I go to, say, a market or just out in the field, I have a wooden box with a red window in it with 2 armholes, and I use that to develop plates on location. The cameras that I use in the wet plate coating process, I have 2. One behind me here is my 8x10. It's a view camera, a large format view camera. Some of them are still being used for film, but they are used kind of in sheet film, 8x10, 4x5. They were used originally for the process. Basically what it is just a light tight box that you put a lens on and you can put a plate in the back of it. That's all that has to happen to make a wet plate camera. Mine are from 1920. I have the 8x10 behind me here, and I have a 5x7 with a 4x5 reducing back, which is actually the little brother to this one. Same brand, same time period, kind of the same aesthetic for it. The lenses I use, the beautiful brass one here is a Petzvelt formula lens from 1870, so it would have been used originally with the process. The main thing with lenses is they have to have pretty wide apertures, which is a bit rare in large format photography. Typically a lens that has a wide aperture would be like an f5.6, which when you think digital isn't that wide of an aperture. The one behind me is about a 3.5, lets quite a lot of light in. My other 2 lenses are 1980s era Russian large format lenses. They have an aperture of f4.5, which still is quite a bright lens, lets a lot of light in. A plate is it's very insensitive to light. If you think about film or digital that measures it in ISO or ASA, a typical film would be 200, 400. My digital camera goes up to 102,000. A plate generally is 0.75 to 1 ISO. So it's very insensitive to light. Even outside in full sun, it's probably about a second of an exposure. In open shade, like maybe up to 6 to 8 seconds, depending on the amount of UV light out there. So to do this process, you do need to find a lens that you can open up to let tons of light in. Making tintype portraits is art to me because it's the composition, the lighting, that's art. It's photography. Everyone knows that. But the chemistry is also art because the way I mix the chemistry is going to affect how the image is, how it's developed, little things like that. It's also like a technical side to it. Like it's quite technical and following formulas, but you're able to play around and kind of make a custom piece of film that works to your process, and that's where I think the art is. The chemistry is always going to be the main issue. You're kind of at the mercy of the chemistry, and it's humidity sensitive, it's temperature sensitive, and it's age sensitive. Whenever it's made, from when it's made, it's deteriorating and it's changing. So if I take photos today with my chemistry, tomorrow they might not react how they work today. So it's not a consistent process. You're kind of constantly troubleshooting everything. And when you are troubleshooting, you can only change one thing to know what it is. You can't, it takes a long time to troubleshoot a process. The chemistry requires you to maintain it. The silver bath, it's kind of like a sourdough starter. I have the original silver bath that I've had from 2017. You add silver to it, you give it some sun because it needs UV light, and add more water, get it to that specific gravity, kind of always kind of maintaining the chemistry. And I think with new people getting into it, it's kind of, you mix up your chemistry and you hope you think it's going to last for you as you do it, but you really have to be cognizant of all the environmental factors going on, where you're shooting it, temperatures, and how you're storing the chemistry as well. I think what people might not know about tintypes, they might have seen tintypes, but I don't think they realize the work that's going into getting one shot. It's in my studio, it might look like quick. I could do maybe one plate every 8 to 10 minutes. That's because my process is very dialed in that. But the amount of work required to get an image, get it to the point from pouring the collodion to the final result, like it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of knowledge going into it as well. A fond moment that I've had shooting tintypes was at Market Collective 2019. I was taking a photo of another photographer actually, and when the photo came up in the fixer, he grabbed me, and he's a big muscly guy. He grabbed me and pulled me in, dogged me, and he's like, because he saw his dad and he saw his grandfather in the photo, which he didn't think he looked like until his tintype came out, but he saw it in there, and yeah, just seeing it hit him like that made me feel like my work is important, obviously, to him. I'm sure everyone likes their photo, but like to him, it really hit him, and he could see his family lineage just in that tintype portrait, so I know he's going to cherish that plate for forever. The most satisfying part of making tintype portraits for me is the reactions of the sitters to their plate when it comes up in the fixer. I've heard so many times from people, usually a spouse that's being brought here that doesn't really know much about them, they'll say to me, I don't like photos of myself, I don't like myself in photos, and I'm of the same, I don't like photos of myself either. And when it comes up in the fixer and they see themselves, they're like, oh, I love that photo. And it's super satisfying knowing someone going into it was probably like, I'm not gonna like this because I don't like photos of myself, to being like, that's like the best photo I have of me. And knowing that photo is gonna be something that gets passed down in their family, because it's gonna last hundreds of years. It's not a bunch of ones and zeros up in the cloud that who knows if we're gonna be able to see it in 50 years. That'll be something that lives for forever. My name is Riley JB. I'm a tintype portrait photographer based in Calgary, Alberta. Find me on Instagram at Riley, not Ryan. Additionally, you can find me at tintype.ca.